Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it's the CEO series where we bring together the most phenomenal people, global leaders, entrepreneurs, disruptors. Our guest today is Dr. Tamara Beckford. She's an emergency medical medicine physician, international speaker, CEO of You Are Caring Docs. She hosts the Dr. Tamara Beckford Show, where she
Mhm.
interviews physicians about healthcare and wellness and their activities inside and outside of clinical medicine. Her expertise in self care has led her to be featured on over 68 podcasts. Whoa. She's been featured in Rolling Out magazine. She is a success mentor at Entree MD Business School. In this role, she mentors 60 physicians weekly and helps them build profitable 6 or 7 figure businesses. Whoa, like that. Her content has been viewed over 1 million times on social media. She has co authored 2 best-selling books, Made for More and Thriving for Burnout. And I'm a big fan. So, welcome, Doctor. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
I'm glad to have you on. I've been following your work for some time, and I said I needed to talk to you. So, I always like to start about
Mhm.
and talk to people concerning the journey, the career journey to
Mhm.
becoming what I just read in the bio and starting
Yes.
from New Jersey
Yeah.
and transitioning on. Walk us through that journey.
Absolutely. So I am originally from Jamaica. Parents emigrated to the United States. I was around preteens at the time. Luckily, during the summers, there was my actually eventually medical school at the time in the 90s, early 90s. I did some summer programs there to get an exploration into the careers. I'm into medicine because I liked science. After really being introduced to being in the medical field and realizing that at that time it allowed me to interact with people, learn more, and be able to do hands on things, I said, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. So, emergency medicine came about after really actually, there in Newark, New Jersey itself, there's a hospital called Newark Beth Israel Medical Center. I got
Yes.
exposed to emergency medicine because I didn't even know it existed. And this attests to those who are in leadership positions. When you're doing things and you have someone who is shadowing you, you never know the impact that you'll have on their life. Because this
Mhm.
doctor who allowed me to shadow her in the ER, I have not seen her since. But her allowing me to shadow, her in the emergency room, seeing what she does as an ER doctor, imprinted in my mind at that tender age. I think I was like 15 or 16. I said, this is what I want to do, emergency medicine. And eventually, as I mentioned, went to medical school there in Newark, New Jersey. So it was full circle, actually, many, many years later. My school is now called Rutgers New Jersey Medical School.
Yeah.
So shout out to them. And did emergency medicine training in Philadelphia at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. At that time, after there, for those who have lived in the north and you recognize snow and snowstorms, I
Yeah.
decided that I was a little bit tired of the snowstorms. And then I took my talents down to the south, and I'm currently in Houston, Texas. So
Wow.
that's where the journey of emergency medicine and
Mhm.
came from.
Mm. So, I saw a special on Netflix a while back on Lenox
Hmm.
Hill, I think it was, and it was emergency medicine. And I was thinking,
How?
at
That's
any given,
probably the
at any
question.
given moment, yeah, at any given moment, there could be a different case. How do you
Absolutely.
structure that? I mean, do you
Yeah.
study everything or?
So the study of emergency medicine, it is the study. I liken it to thinking about what are the most important next three steps that you need in order to stabilize a patient. So when we
Okay.
think of the emergency room, you have the trauma situation and then you have the non-trauma. For those who are the non-trauma, for example, someone's coming in with abdominal pain, like, your stomach is hurting, or you're coming in with pain in your chest. Our job is to think about what are the next three things that can go wrong within the next 24 to 48 hours, right? And then you start to triage that information. You do the necessary steps that it takes to find out if that indeed appears to be what's going on. And then you make what we
Hmm.
call a disposition. So our disposition is usually, is this patient safe enough to go home and follow up with their appropriate outside care? Or I think I need this patient to stay in the hospital because they either need additional emergent care or we need to just watch them for a period and see what may develop, right? So isn't that a liken to really what CEOs do? We really
Yeah.
think triage. Yeah. So in essence, it was a little bit of a way of preparing myself, unbeknownst to me, to think about, how we're doing things in really emergent setting, troubleshooting and putting out fires. So that's
Wow.
emergency medicine.
So that has to be high stress. And you mentioned Newark, New Jersey,
Yes.
and because I live part of my time in Verona, New Jersey. You have a
Hmm.
lot of cases coming into a situation like that. It's kind of an inner city
Hmm.
environment. Um, the stress was that what drove you towards what you're branching off into now? Because I've got to figure that that's high stress. The ambulance
Yeah.
comes in.
Absolutely. So emergency medicine is a high stress job. The great thing about the training is that you're trained in order to think, um, and to think effectively under those conditions. However, humans, we're not robots. So, with time, of course, your mind will wear out. So you are under pressure consistently to make, and it's healthcare, so to make decisions that are life or death decisions.
Mm,
So thinking about how stress affects the body on a consistent basis, yes, that made me say, okay, this is something that I need to address.
mm,
Now, we have emergency medicine, but then we also had 2020, which was COVID.
okay.
So with COVID, if you really think about it, emergency medicine services and those of us who are frontline workers, we were really front and center. And the stress level started to increase even more. I mean, as much as it has increased, even I think the World Health Organization mentions up to 28% of increase in anxiety in population overall throughout the world. In medicine, even those of us who were trained started to notice an increase in our stress. Why? Because we're humans, right? We had this introduction of a virus where we had no idea what it is, how it works. We just knew that you come in contact with it. We're assuming it's airborne or is it respiratory related. However, we know that we are seeing patients dying and we're seeing that the cases are increasing. So during that period, there was such a heightened amount of stress and anxiety that I noticed around me. However, contrary to all of that, I noticed that I was at one of my calmest, and
Are
that,
you kidding
yes, absolutely. And I had to question, why is it that I am actually thriving during this time? And I recognized it was because of my self care. And that's when I said, I have to use what I am using on myself and I have to let others know. So,
me? Because during that period, when you'd watch the news and you see the hospitals that were inundated and people and nurses, and I'm thinking, there's no way I could do that.
mhm,
And you
yeah,
say you were calm. You were
yeah.
very calm during that period. I mean, Zen
Hmm.
like.
Yeah, it was very uncanny. But contrary, what I recognized was that a few months prior, I started to work on myself, a lot of mental work, a lot of self development, working
Mm,
on such as morning routines, and just getting myself in a state that when I entered into my day, I entered with conviction and my mind was set right. During COVID, I realized that I had to really dig deep and continue to do that. But it had become a routine for me. So the mindset, the recognizing, things that I can control and things that I could not control, and really
mm,
being okay and just putting my best and just recognizing where there might be areas that I will need to work on eventually, but I can give my best right now. That really helped, and that's really part of the self-care. I know, I see your face like, what?
yeah, well, you know what? I interpret
Mhm.
that as you were listening to your body, you was listening to the
Absolutely.
mental side of it. I referenced that because I gave a speech yesterday and I was in Islamabad. As I told you, I just got off a flight a few hours ago, and that was
Hmm.
one of the things I was telling these so-called big shot CEOs is that are you thinking about yourselves on Fridays or the end of the week if you had a bad call, self-reflection,
Hmm.
and doing that, and they're all talking all this big talk, big talk, big talk, but you're going to have to heal yourself first. Wow, that was
Absolutely.
insightful. So is that how the your CEO role started? Your entrepreneurial kind of transition?
Yeah.
You packaged that and took it to the next step.
So that was the transition in portion in your caring docs. So I recognized that self-care was just so important. It was an important aspect within life. And when people really think about self-care, they think about it in off times, as in like in my personal, but they never think about it in their professional life, right? So we don't think about incorporating self-care at work. We only think about it when we're off of work. But if we can use those same techniques during
Mm,
times of stress when your work, productivity can increase. Because as we mentioned, we're not robots. There are going to be periods of times when our mind just needs to be settled in order to regenerate and boost.
mm. So we force ourselves to do that because sometimes I'll wake up in the morning. It's like because normally my routine was 5 a.m. I'd go out and walk for 2 hours, but
Hmm.
some mornings that's it. Not today.
Hmm.
And then some mornings I'll say, get your behind out of the bed and
Hmm.
go. And I force myself to do it. How do we deal with that? Do I do it today? I know I can lay here and sleep another couple hours or whatever.
Well, number one, that is so normal, and once we understand that that is part of human nature, and we know the books, about the morning routines and also how to develop a routine into a habit, do it for 21 days and then 90 days, it really just becomes a part of your life. Now, that's important to one understand like how a habit is formed and recognize that during that period, if you have days when you are just so fatigued that you cannot get up to do that routine, it is
Yeah.
okay. It is okay. Now, the other half of that caveat is to try to ensure that you can put yourself back on the routine, and do understand that it will be a little bit challenging, right? Once you stop, the hill to get back up is a little bit steeper, but you
Yeah.
keep going at it. One other
Yeah.
thing that I do want to say is that I like when you mention your routine, one of the great part of your routine was movement. You said I get up and I start to move, right? But
Yeah.
additional things that I added to that routine was I started to invest in what am I putting into my mind before I let my day start,
Yeah.
right? So what are you putting into your mind? And that's when people, you can either do, some are doing meditation, which is emptying, focusing, or some are doing gratitude practices where you're documenting what are you grateful for, because it
Yeah.
sets the tone for your day. Or are
Mm,
you inputting positive affirmations, or for me, I was listening to motivational speeches, things to just boost morale, to boost my mental energy, and to really just look at life from a different perspective. That's why when I went into work, my mind was already at
I'm,
rest.
I'm cool with all this. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Oh,
as
wow.
a result, I didn't even realize how much of an impact it was having. And I'll add another caveat to all that. So I am an emergency medicine physician, but I also only work at nights. So we know what happens at night.
Oh.
So I'm a night, yeah. So I work at night. So we know the challenges that, at times even
Mm,
occur. And recently, I was awarded like the collaborative physician award at my hospital for the night shift because, and this is throughout the hospital. I think there were three of us in the entire hospital that got this award, and
hmm.
so you never realize the impact that you're having. And it says, for working one of the challenging shifts, for always, you know, being so collaborative with the team in the hospital, not just in the ER, but throughout. But it's part of this, as you call it, my Zen like persona from just
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
internally.
Mm. You mentioned the morning routine. Mine is the morning routine. Some
Hmm.
people do this at night before they go to bed to
Absolutely.
try to calm everything down from that side.
Hmm.
Whatever works, whatever floats your boat, kind of thing. Whatever works for you. Is that kind of the?
Emptying the mind is important, and when you're doing that in the evening, you're doing that because of another very important self-care routine, which is sleep.
Okay.
Because if we think about it, yeah, so we as adults, the standard should be at least 8 hours, between 6 to 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, that's
I
hard.
understand it. It is hard. It is very, very challenging. But what's even harder is when you try to go to sleep and you keep waking up because whatever is going on in your mind, it's still all the to dos for tomorrow, or the I
Yes.
didn't get to complete today. I should
Mm,
have, I wished I, could have. So, what are some ways to do that? That's brain dumping. So, that's another technique in getting everything out of your mind onto paper. So, you dump everything, or another even powerful one is the gratitude practice. So you can do it in the morning or in the evening. So,
mm.
instead of looking and said, oh, I wasted my day, I didn't even, and then fill in the blank of all the negative minds that the mind wants to add
Yeah.
and start
Flush
to
it out.
incorporate. Yeah, you flush it out and then you incorporate a gratitude. I'm grateful for, and then you add
Yeah.
that in.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That doesn't work for me. My friend John Self is Texas. He's from Texas, and he said that he keeps a daily journal, but he started out life as a reporter. So he
Ah,
he said he keeps a daily journal, keeping track of a cleansing of whatever you would call that. Yeah.
you said cleansing. Relax. Yes, of course. It's a cleansing of the mind. Absolutely,
Yes.
Ron. It's a cleansing
Yeah.
of the mind.
So I get on the flight today, and I see people
Mhm.
get on there, and they just fell asleep just like that. And I'm there. I've got
Mhm.
1,001 things on my mind. I'm making notes. And I noticed, I said, I'm the only one making notes or not doing any of the entertainment stuff because I had so many things that I needed to do.
Mhm.
So what would you advise if I'm your patient, what would you advise me to do? Because I have so many things up in the air, and
Mhm.
this is why the morning time works better for me. Early
Yeah.
morning works better for me.
Yeah. So that is so. Do you have a routine of how you get that out of your mind, or is it just when it comes up that you just say, "Okay, I need to go now. I need to do this now."
Yeah, it's like that. Because it's always there. There's so many things that with clients and all the things you're
Mhm.
dealing with. it's like 24/7. But I don't mind the 24/7 because I enjoy work. My work is not work. I enjoy what I do. But I
Absolutely.
look at everybody on the flight was asleep, and I'm looking around. I'm the only one that's awake. Me and some babies up front were crying.
But
I
here,
could.
okay,
I was
so
just
well, here's my question to you. Did you feel like you needed sleep at that time?
no. I'm just looking at everybody. I said, I wish I was able to just sleep for the flight was only 4 hours. I wish I was able to just sleep for 4 hours, but I'm writing, making a note here. Oh, let me finish reading this one and this one and
So, but you weren't sleepy and you weren't tired.
no. And I'm sure a lot of other people got in there. I noticed because I fly a lot. I noticed some people get on the flight, they go out just like that. So as we're
I'm
talking
those
about,
some people.
are you
I
one of
will,
those? Yes.
yeah, at the
Yeah.
beginning, at least for 30 minutes. It's the white noise
Okay.
or the brown noise of the engine. It just
Okay.
puts me down. However, if I'm not sleepy, I won't go to sleep. So at that time, you recognize and you're going based on your body. And that's what's important about self care, right? It is
Okay.
self, it's individualized. It's not a routine for others, it's a routine for yourself. So during
Okay.
that time, if you were not sleepy and you did not feel fatigued, then you did not need to do rest at that period of time. So you forcing yourself to sleep because the rest of the flight appears to be asleep would have just been
Okay.
an exercise in futility. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it would have increased anxiety because
Mm,
you added to the I
yeah.
needed to do ABC and I wasted this amount of time. Am I correct? Is that how the mind would have
Yeah.
really gone down that
Yeah.
route?
Yeah, yeah. So John mentioned what time did the flight? The flight was leaving at 8 o'clock Pakistan time, but it's an hour away from the airport. So I got up like 4:30. It doesn't bother me getting. I'm an early person. It doesn't bother me to do that. But that was just
Mm-hmm.
kind of. I don't want to get sidetracked on that. So, so are you taking your work because I know the company that you started. You're working with doctors. Have you gone into organizations or corporations to say, let's talk about this stressful workplace. How can we? What advice would you give to CEOs or that level?
Mm-hmm.
How we can create that? Because I'm going to flip that and come back and ask you, what about workers that are just overwhelmed? So there's a two-part question.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say for the first portion, yes, I do talk about this outside of medicine because I think it's important as a physician and as also a CEO to recognize some of the skill set that I have attained in medicine and to be able to provide that for the other industries. Recognizing that the healthcare industry is not the only industry that's dealing with stress and burnout. I mean, it might be
Mm,
highlighted a lot because, especially because of COVID, and it's still in the face. And when we think about burnout, a lot of times we really attribute it or we really liken it to healthcare. But there are other industries who are dealing with the similar situations. The
right.
law, finance, engineering, tech, even education. So in tech, they're up to like 77%, or feeling burned out. In education, it's a K through 12, around 54% of the teachers are burnt out. And these are the people we need in order to help our future, right, with education. So I do take what I am doing outside of medicine and also to help other industries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, pertaining to the CEOs and how they can incorporate that, one thing that I can say, like if you're in large companies, large organizations, a lot of times the CEOs might have a coach and they might have like an executive coach and so they're taught some of these skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
When you really incorporate it for your team to see and to be invested in it, they have to see you invest in it, right?
Okay.
So when you're talking about like, now I want to incorporate self-care in my organization, they have to see that you are doing it. So
Yeah.
if you're saying that rest is important and taking moments in between to take breaks are important
Hmm.
in order to boost our productivity in our
Right.
organization, they need to feel comfortable being able to take breaks. Because if they
Okay.
don't see you taking a break, or they feel like they're going to be
Yeah.
looked upon negatively in doing so, then no matter what you say, the team will
Mm.
be looking at
Yeah.
you as the leader.
Yeah.
Now, why is this so important? And this is part of my mission as to teaching about self care and the importance of stress reduction and burnout prevention in the workplace, is because I feel like there's a ripple effect in their work life balance, right? So if you're learning these techniques and how to incorporate them at work, you will start to incorporate these techniques at home, and then you will
Okay.
start to be able to talk about it to those in your home. Okay, this is why
Mm.
we're doing this right now. And if you really think about it, that's how you can have a ripple effect in the community, which is just a small way of making a big impact. And so that's
Yeah.
why it's so important. Mhm.
Mm. One of the key points you mentioned was from that group, that C-suite, and that's who I deal
Mhm.
with the vast majority of the time. It's always
Mhm.
a lot of big talk. They say things, and then they do something, and they'll send you an email at 9 o'clock at night. You
Yes.
know, but you're
Because it
always
just
talking.
came into their mind and they had to
Yeah,
just
yeah,
get
yeah.
it up.
Right away. So you're talking about self care and all of this, and then
Mhm.
the people that are reporting into you are stressed out. So I started my presentation with facts
Mhm.
of turnover, bad bosses, and all these kind of things, and how it can have a ripple effect inside of an organization. But I sometimes I just notice the cluelessness of not connecting to people, because the big talk sounds good for the shareholders and the C-suite and the board and all of that. But that if
Mhm.
you go down 5 levels in the org, they have no idea what you're talking about, because they know you just talk, talk, talk.
Mhm. Because you end up being task oriented, right? So the task at hand is to this.
Mm.
But if we really look at it, as you mentioned, from the human level, the task can still be accomplished if we really look at how we can boost the productivity in the individual. And rest is an important part of that. Breaks are important,
Yeah.
is an important part of that. Because when you do allow for breaks, you're refreshed, you're replenished, and then the productivity, you're coming back with creativity, new ideas, innovative ways to get things done, efficient ways to do things, which is the bottom
Mhm.
line in the first place.
Yeah, that cascading down, and people can understand that. So I read an article during COVID
Hmm.
about a CEO was stressed out one Friday, and he just decided to send an email out to all the company and to all the workers, 2,000 employees, and he just talked about how he was stressed out, what he was dealing with, and
Hmm.
this is a lot that we're all going through. I share what you're going through. I'm going through it now, and here's what I did this week. And he kind of laid it all out, and it became a normal Friday routine for him to send that note out, and the
Hmm.
engagement level of his workforce shot through the roof. But
Yes.
he told them at the end of it, he says, if you are struggling, he said, send me an email. We'll talk. We'll do whatever.
Hmm.
I may not know the answer, but we'll figure it out together. You're
Yes.
talking about nailing it. He nailed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And interestingly so, I have a family friend who is a captain of one of the airlines in one of the industries, and we were just having a conversation last week. And I said, as a leader in, the copy, like, what is it that you do? And he mentioned something similarly. He says that before we go on and
Yeah.
we're, meeting as a team, we talk about like, what are some of the tasks, how are we feeling today, what are some of the struggles that you're having, personal and professional struggles right now. And it attests to the similar to what you mentioned that CEO did. And actually remember that article too. I don't recall the company, but I do recall that article. And it was such an important thing because it was someone who was vulnerable during the time, and it was really talking about vulnerability in leadership. And that during times when we're having challenges, vulnerability is as important to the team because they recognize that you're human and you don't have to have all the answers, which I think was another point in that article, that you didn't have to have all the answers, especially during a time such as COVID.
So I also do a lot of work in leadership development, and one of the things I
Hmm.
say, the most powerful phrase you can always tell your people is, "I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't have the answer, but can we
Hmm.
figure it out together?" And I said, if you're
Absolutely.
willing to say that, because I think lots of times people that want to be leaders, they feel they have to know all the answers, they have to know everything. Nobody knows
Hmm.
everything, and be
No.
comfortable with it. And this is what a lot of them struggle with.
Hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, even in leadership positions, I think when we go in there with the mindset that we are leaders. And as a leader, my understanding is like I am like omniscient in some respect. Like I am all knowing. I need to know every single thing that's going on. However, even those, when we look at even some of our top leaders, those who have been presidents, they said that they recognize what they do know, recognize what you don't know, which is so important. Acknowledge, like, I don't know this, and then you get others to fill in the gap, right? So you get others who are more adept in that area to fill in the gap. But when it comes to you talking and communicating with your team, it is okay, as you mentioned, to address the I don't know, but I will look into it.
So
I will look
there
into
was
it.
so there was some research that was done. Microsoft put together this team doing COVID,
Hmm.
pre-COVID COVID, and the research came back and they said two things from an organizational side is which is what I deal with, that organizations are going to have to do better, is to listen more and
Hmm.
communicate better. And so what we're talking about now is how do you communicate that stress-free workplace environment that everyone understands that, and that's cascaded down. The CEO that wrote the letter. There was another
Hmm.
photo last week I saw of a woman who was the CEO of a startup, and she was breastfeeding her baby on a call.
Hmm.
I mean, she was covering all of this, and it kind of got out on the internet, and they had so many people trying to say, "I want to work here because this CEO gets it."
Hmm. 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 So, when we even think about the humanizing the experience of family planning, humanizing the experience of even having a family, that takes it to an entire other level, right?
Yeah,
Humanizing the fact that as women, there are a couple things that we hold true, like when we do start families, there are big decisions that get made in the family, and that holds true for men too. Like, okay,
yeah,
things like I might have started in this company as someone without a family, but once you start a family, decisions start to change.
yeah,
The dynamic of your home life has changed tremendously. Now, being in an environment, there's some people who want to still work at the same capacity or try to build themselves back up to the same capacity than when they started the family. Having that ability to know that there are adjustments that might be like needed, however, I can still get to that capacity is so important. Interestingly too, I was talking with another young lady, and this is for people who have had to deal with challenges overall. So this woman had to deal with a challenge. It wasn't during a birth challenge, but it was a mental challenge, a mental breakdown. And she said that when she was going back to work, one of the unfortunate things that occurred was that they started to handle her with kitten gloves, in that she wanted to go back, but no one asked her, what is
Yeah.
it that you want? They just said, well, she had to take a mental break, so let's not give her as much. And she said, no, I wanted to go back to work because that's what I loved. That those are the
Yes.
things that I loved. But no one
Mm,
asked her what she wanted. They
yeah.
just
Hmm.
assumed what she wanted. And I thought that that was a great lesson for all of
Hmm.
us, during those times.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you think of that, people, the audience, so to speak, was making a decision for that person without getting some insight from them. In other words,
From
you
them.
tell me I can help to do that.
Yes.
So that is
How
that kind of
can
the
I
model
help?
that we should look for. How can I help? So if I'm this big shot CEO, I'm
Hmm.
asking my people. That was one of the reports I read on the flight.
Hmm.
I'm asking my people, how do I do better? How can we as an organization do better? Our value proposition, how can we connect with you more?
Hmm.
And they give us the questions and all those kind of things. So this is this is how you would put us under a microscope from our side, because the next question I'm going to ask you is that you created your company to tell us about that because you saw a need for other doctors who have gone through things. So let's do the org side first,
Hmm.
and then we'll put it back to you are docs.
Absolutely. So from the organizational standpoint, yes, absolutely. It's the simple question, how can I support you? What
Mhm.
is it that you need during this time to be at your best? Because in assuming what someone needs, that's kind of the worst that we could do, right? And those who are on the side asking at times can be so challenging. But if we can find a way to bridge that communication, where I asked, what can I do to support you during this time? And then you will feel comfortable enough to let me know, and to not just fall in the category of, well, you really don't want to know, which
Yeah.
unfortunately happens, right?
Yeah.
In the category, which is just like, okay, well, these are some of the things that I need to be at my best.
Mm.
And, if it's reasonable, then yes, why not? Let's do to support you. Because when we're thinking, and I might have this utopia mindset, but my thought is that if we are working together, we're working together for a common goal.
Yeah.
Therefore, I need to ensure that you are at your best so that you can achieve the goals that you have set for yourselves, or the standards that you
Mhm.
have set for yourself. And how can I do that? By asking you.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about your docs
The You're
and how
Caring
that.
Docs.
Yes,
Yes,
your caring doc.
absolutely. So Your Caring Docs, like I said, is out there to really help the organizations to reduce their employee stress and burnout. Yeah,
Okay.
through self-care workshop and through speaking. So that is, and it's all really coming from a standpoint of someone who has been through some of the most challenging times within the career
Been there, done
standpoint.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I've incorporated a technique where I talk about, which I call the pause technique. And it really is something that you can do, 2 to 5 minute technique throughout the middle of the day. And the P is literally for pause. So when you
Okay.
find yourself at a heightened level of stress, you pause. So how do we do that? So P is for pause. A is acknowledge the stressor. So, what is it that's stressing me right now? So, if you were feeling stressed out on that flight this morning, you'd say, okay, I'm stressed out because my to do list is very long, or I have to add these things to my to do list, right?
Mm.
So, you is understand how this stressor is affecting you. So, what are you feeling at that moment? Am I feeling anxious, or am I fatigued? Am I having palpitations? Like, what is it that I'm feeling? Am I angry? What is it? You're kind of understanding this feeling. And then the S is to set a self care goal. What method? Okay, I am feeling anxious, therefore, I'm going to start to incorporate a few breathing exercises. I'm going to take 2 minutes and do a deep breathing exercise to reduce my anxiety level. Or I'm feeling angry, so I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to just walk away. If you have the ability to go outside, to incorporate nature, to just look and to just really look around and to really incorporate your senses. What am I feeling, smelling,
Mm,
tasting right now? You really just bring that together. And then
mm.
the E is execute. So I'm not saying I'm going to just do this. You're going to
Yeah.
actually do it. And that's the pause.
So use and execute. It's kind of like people say, "Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the
As soon
gym 5 days
as
a week, and it is 4, 3, 2, and then it's no more." So execute. As someone
execute is
said
the
in the
E.
speech yesterday, they said, "You know what? Every government should have a minister of execution because everybody's got big plans, but how often you're going to execute?" So that was perfect. I got good notes here. I get good notes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. The minister of execution to get it
Yeah,
done.
he said because Pakistan is going through a lot of challenges, from the government side and currency,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like really a beautiful country that's in stress. And someone said that we need a minute of execution because every time a government comes in, they've got all the plans, and it goes by the wayside over a period of time.
Mhm.
So here's what I wanted to ask you. When people start from here and they become successful, I always like to go back and talk about what major influences. I read something from someone today that graduated magna cum laude, whatever it was,
Mhm.
and they thought about a teacher that told them, "You always talk too much. You talk too much. You talk too much." And she said, "I would love to go back and find this person to tell her that talking too much got me to here." So that
Absolutely.
was kind of a negative and positive connotation because you can always take
Mhm.
it and flip it whichever way you want. So my question is, who were who was in, were major influences in your career trajectory to get where you are today? Because we all have these stories.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really bring it back to family as a major
Okay.
influence. Yeah, so I really am deep rooted, and I look at the sacrifices that were made. When we really think about uprooting from your country and moving to a different country, having to
Yeah.
incorporate in
Yeah.
the culture,
Yeah.
doing just the day-to-day life. I recall, as we mentioned, I am from Jamaica. So in Jamaica on Sunday evenings, we have rice and peas. I think, that's our traditional evening, Sunday evening meal along with whatever
You're making me
protein.
hungry now, but that's okay.
But I distinctly remember when my mom first came here and she's trying to shop and, try to, in Jamaica, she would do everything from scratch. And she was trying to just get this can of coconut milk, but it was the coconut milk was one that was used for drinks, but it just said coconut milk. And so she didn't realize it was a sweetened version. And I just saw she was just so disappointed. And she was just, there was a little bit of frustration, be like, I'm in this new country. I don't know. Things are just so different. And, so when you see all of that and see them move in and build a life and have been able to be a success themselves, as you're watching, that just motivates you to go
Mm,
the extra mile, to
mm,
say that no matter what, I can do it. So that's one of the
yeah.
biggest influence. And then the other
Yeah.
is I do have like a business mentor who has like so much faith and belief in my ability, seeing
Yeah.
things that I didn't see in myself, and really helping me to execute. And I would never, without her, and her name's Dr. Una, without her slight tug, have even
Yeah.
ventured into one, speaking on social media to the point now where I am on every week, if not every
Uh,
day.
yeah. I know.
So
That,
those
that's
are some deep
yeah.
rooted influences.
That's how I came. that's how I became a fan because I saw some of your work,
Hmm.
online. Um, so thanks for that anchor point. So, what would you say was the most important leadership lesson you've learned in your career?
Calm amidst the storm.
Mm,
Yes,
you
it's
know,
really
go
it
go ahead, because
really.
it was powerful when you said all the chaos is in the emergency room. I'm as calm as can be. Well,
Mhm. Calm amidst the storm. It allows, there are a couple things, and the reason this is so powerful and it's a part of who I am inherently, there are a couple of things that happens. Even when we think about when you're running an organization, if you're in healthcare, or especially for those who are in the emergency room, when you're running chaotic things like a code, when you're calm as a leader, it inherently calms the rest of the team.
okay.
When the team is calm,
Yeah.
what happens? Ideas come in,
Yeah.
creative ways come in, how additional ways to problem solve comes in.
Mm,
So calm amidst the storm is just the way that I like to handle as many of my challenges as possible because it allows those around me to be at their best during that time.
mm.
So,
And so you mentioned those around you, and see, one of the other key points of leadership, people are watching you. Your
yes.
team is watching you. They pull from you. They pull energy from you, whether it's positive or negative,
Hmm.
and all that plays a role. Is
Absolutely.
that the kind of scientific way of looking at, not scientific from my
No,
side,
it
but from
is true.
yes,
It is. It's
yes.
absolutely true, which is the reason why I conduct myself the way I do, because I recognize, and it's not, and you might not recognize it immediately, but as you mentioned, you do have people who are watching you and they're watching, they're emulating you, they're
Yeah,
learning from you, they're using you as mentors,
yes.
even if they might not have come and even said hello.
Hmm.
So the way you conduct yourself and the way that you conduct your team is as important.
So how do you find time to work nights? Oh my goodness! And then you're running the business during the day
So
and
I,
other things, speaking
yeah,
engagements. I mean, whoa!
I
You're talking
know
about a
it's
full plate.
it
So
is
tell
a
me
full
about.
plate, but as you mentioned, when you're doing what you love,
There we go. It's not work.
you're not working. So
Not work.
I fortunately have been able to work in the emergency room at the first half of the week and be able to do the additional things I love on the second half.
Mm, mm.
Mhm.
Before we close, I wanted to say that I have a problem with downtime, like
Mhm.
weekends. 'Cause I like to work. So I work basically 7 days a week and it doesn't bother me. Is that cool or is that not cool? Or it depends
Well,
upon
so
the let me get a
it's
couch and
important. Yes,
let you
let you get a couch and lay down. Absolutely. So it is important. Downtime is important. So you might need to look at how you are incorporating downtime, right?
mm,
Because as I mentioned, the mind needs its downtime in order to create. It needs
okay.
that space in order to relax, to regenerate the cells in the brain. That's what's happening during rest, during sleep. It's restoring, it's regenerating. It's kind of like the computer rebooting itself, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
also for the health reasons, downtime is important. If we're at a constant level of stress, our stress hormone is at a very constant high, right?
Really.
It's important for us to manage that because that stress hormone cortisol, it affects our health, blood pressure, diabetes, and additional health related issues. So working is important. Recognizing when to stop working is just as important. And rest and
Okay.
restorative activities are important. And it could be just something as simple as I cannot wait to go and hang out with my friend who is blank. And
Okay.
that's just as important. Those are, you're releasing hormones, you're releasing your dopamine and those serotonin, oxytocin. Those are all very great
Mhm.
hormones, and they're antidepressants, natural antidepressants. So
Mhm.
yes, rest is important.
Dr. Beckford, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And I need to send you a check because of what you've done mentally with me over the past 50 minutes and talking, because it's important. And I hope everyone in the audience gets the seriousness of this, because eventually, you don't deal with that aspect. It could be
Mhm.
negative things that could happen as a result. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much. It was. I'm so glad that you found time to come and be with us for this important topic. So thank you, and I'll be in touch. So just hang on as we close out.
Thank you for having me.